Today we are going to be talking about holiday stress. And there are different types of holiday stressors that can come up and just different ways that we can cope with it. And we're definitely going to go over those today to give you some tips for getting through this holiday season. So my name is Jordan Shea. I am a master's level trainee here at U of M-Dearborn CAPS. And then my colleague's name is actually Joseph Cannell, and he is a doctoral trainee at U of M-Dearborn CAPS as well, and he will be helping out today with talking you through these different holiday stressors and how to cope with them. So the first thing I want to talk about is just normalizing holiday stress. So believe it or not, 80% of people report some form or capacity of holiday stress. So definitely if you feel like you're alone in this specific instance, you are definitely not. There's actually a lot of different engagement with good and bad stress that can happen during the holiday season. And what I really mean by that is that although all of us experience, or a lot of us experience some form of stress throughout the holiday season, the type of stress that you can be experiencing can be different from person to person. So for instance, good stress might be, for instance, maybe you're getting ready to see a ton of family, maybe if we weren't in a pandemic, right? You're getting ready to see a bunch of family, you're setting up schedules to go and visit particular family members, but that's completely out of the norm for you. And that's something that is going to be stressful for you to try to figure out that schedule in accordance with your current schedule. So that could be a form of good stress. Although it's stress, it's for something that you're looking forward to. Whereas you can also endure some bad stress. So bad stress could look like maybe you have to go see that family member that you despise seeing during the holiday season, or maybe, financial strains are really stressing you out with being able to get everyone the gifts you want to get them this year. And this can look different for everyone, but again, there's so many different types of stressors we can run into when we are going through the holiday season. Another stressor, which I already kind of touched on, is spending too much money. So a lot of us want to get that perfect gift for every single person or all of our loved ones in our lives, but realistically, we can't achieve that amount of spending to do that for every single person. So that can always be a huge stressor on people, especially if money is tight in general. And then something else that comes up for a lot of people is this question of, are we spending too much time with loved ones or not enough? And what I really mean by this is that for some people, seeing loved ones during the holiday season brings about so much joy and it brings about so much happiness within their lives that they're willing to change their schedule around for anything to be able to see these people. However, for some people, seeing a bunch of loved ones around this time is really stressful because maybe you are more of an introverted person. You can handle small doses of seeing your loved ones all at once, but the holiday season, it's like every single weekend, it becomes overwhelming and you don't have enough time for yourself. On the opposite end of the spectrum is that being in a pandemic right now and in an unprecedented time, a lot of us are isolated and living by ourselves or with a very limited amount of people. So what you might be experiencing in particular to this holiday season is that you're actually not getting enough time with your loved ones. And that's been really stressful and lonely for you to go through. So although, again, this can look very different for individual people, it's still a stressor that we all experience together, depending on what you are going through. So now we're going to talk a bit about how we can handle this holiday stress. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is setting intentions and boundaries. So this kind of goes back to the previous slide a little bit in the sense that going back to maybe like finances, for instance. Let's say you have the intention of buying people a certain amount of gifts in your life, or you have the intention to buy the people that you're really close with or that you're really intimate with larger gifts, and maybe other extended family some smaller gifts that are less money. So just like knowing what those boundaries are, knowing what your boundaries are, for instance, like too with like your schedule, how many people you want to see, are you willing to see anyone during this unprecedented time, and willing to put yourself out there. Like for instance, there's so many things to keep in mind, like are you an at-risk individual for contracting COVID-19? Are other people in your family at risk? just like knowing what your intentions are for your family and just setting boundaries accordingly. And again, this can come up with like schedules, this can come up with finances, this can come up with like family demands and expectations, but just really keeping in mind again, like what you want for yourself in those instances and setting strong intentions and boundaries moving forward and letting people know about those intentions and boundaries. At the same time too, just practice some gratitude. Like if, for instance, let's say you're stuck in a house full of a bunch of people that you've been with ever since the start of the pandemic, just being grateful that come the holidays, you will more than likely be spending that time with those people that you've been stuck with for so long. So just knowing at times, like, although everything can be tough going on right now and stressful, just being grateful for what you do have, being grateful that maybe, let's say, for instance, you're healthy or that you have the ability to buy people gifts or you have the ability to spend time with people or even with yourself on the holidays. And that's enough for the amount of stress and uncertainty that we've had in this upcoming, throughout this entire year, but most importantly, this upcoming season. Another thing I want to talk about is just making sure that you take breaks. So again, for a lot of us, our schedules kind of get flipped upside down the closer we get to the holiday season. And really, we have to set aside our own wants and needs for the wants and needs of others. However, this specific year is very different than previous holiday experiences we've had, in the sense that a lot of us are really stuck at home and don't get to engage in the typical traditions that we would normally do. So just acknowledge that that is happening and acknowledge your feelings around this. So if you need a break because your family's being overwhelming, or you need a break because your family is setting up expectations that maybe don't align with your expectations, just know like when you need to take a break from that stress and engage in something that's going to make you feel better, such as like going on a walk, exercising, or just like maybe journaling, or anything that you know is really just going to make you feel good and give you that break to replenish and rejuvenate. And then also be realistic. So again, going back to like finances, for instance, we can be really stuck in what we want to get people and like what would be awesome if we could get like our loved ones for this holiday season. But maybe it's just not in the financial budget. And just knowing that and acknowledging that and just saying to yourself, like, you know, I'm doing the best I can with the resources I have. And sometimes that can be a really tough conversation to have with yourself. But again, just knowing that it's okay and that this year has been super uncertain and unprecedented, and we are all doing the best that we can possibly do. And just, again, acknowledge that you're even acknowledging that and taking the time for yourself to engage in self-care. But now enough of me talking. I'm going to go ahead and hand over the baton to Joe here, who's going to walk you through the rest of the ways that we can handle our holiday stress.
Thank you, Jordan. As Jordan has mentioned, there's a lot of other things that go on in the holidays, but one of the most important aspects of holiday self-care is just being able to set aside those differences. You know, we all have family controversies or office controversies, different situations that emerge that cause us social stress. And, the best thing to do is to set that aside. We don't always start the trouble, so to speak, but, being able to walk away and just let bygones be bygones. Also, sticking to a budget. We would really like to be able to buy presents for all of our nieces and nephews, maybe, or to go on that trip. But being realistic, there's only so much that we can do. And just setting out a budget beforehand, before the holiday season starts, before you go Black Friday shopping, can be a real important thing to do and very helpful in the long run. And then learning to say no. There's only a limited number of hours in the day. There's only so many holiday parties that you can attend. There's only so many things you can do for others. It is the season of giving, as we like to say, but also, sometimes you're just going to have to say no. You're going to have to step back and, not go into every single, potential obligation. So just remembering to set those boundaries and knowing what you can and can't do. As opposed, continuing on with self-care, keeping up with healthy habits, things like exercise, eating a healthy diet, and maintaining a good sleep and work schedule. We talk a lot about work-life balance, and that's important because obviously, that can really get out of balance in the holiday season as work obligations may be increasing and family obligations may be increasing at the same time. So just taking that time out for self-care. And of course, self-compassion. That is giving yourself a break, understanding that it is a stressful time and it's all right to feel stress and it's all right not to meet everyone's expectation. Sometimes you're not going to meet everyone's expectation and that's okay. So to summarize the recommendations, acknowledge your feelings. Again, we know this is a stressful time and that's okay. Just acknowledging that that's actually what you're feeling. Reaching out to others, friends and family, talking to other people about what you may be going through. Being realistic, having realistic expectations about what can and can't be done over the holiday season. Setting aside differences with people that you may have had conflicts with in the past. Sticking to a budget, not overspending, and making sure to plan out, a holiday budget. And then again, related to that, planning ahead, just, putting yourself on a schedule, knowing, when you're going to have to be somewhere, what days you're going to have to do this or that obligation, so that you'll also have time to plan your self-care and with all that. And learning to say no. Understanding that you're not going to be able to meet every expectation. And of course, not abandoning your healthy habits. That's your self-care, your sleep, your diet, your exercise, and just taking time out for you to do things that you enjoy. Perhaps you have a hobby or, maybe even just a TV show that you want to watch. And then taking a breather. Again, just relaxing and, doing something for yourself. And then if you need to, also seeking professional help. If you, perhaps, it is a good time to start therapy. And so that everyone's aware, we do have resources here at U of Michigan-Dearborn, and the Counseling and Psychological Services Department is located on campus, and we still are doing remote therapy. And if you would like to make an appointment or to see a counselor or just, check in, we have the phone numbers 313-593-5430, or we can be reached by email at University of Michigan-Dearborn Caps at umich.edu.
All right, well, that concludes this mini little talk and discussion that we had about holiday stress. I hope that you all find this at least somewhat helpful. And then again, if you have a very specific concern, you can always reach out to UM-Dearborn Caps, and we will go ahead and set you up with someone if that's something that you're looking for. But other than that, it was really nice being able to do this for everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season.